Today I'm going to explain the concept of speculative bubbles, and I'm going to use the card game Weiss Schwarz as an example.
Say hello to Elemental Hero Neo Bubbleman!
Right off the bat, I'm just going to say that if you're investing or even collecting any of these collectibles or card games, if you think that just because it's in a bubble that the price will drop to zero at some point and bottom out, that's completely untrue. Because I know a lot of times I point out that you have to be very, very careful of getting the rug pulled from under you. But I'm not naive to think enough that these prices will go to absolute zero, because if you think about it logically, it's pretty much impossible, right? But yeah, I just wanted to get that misconception out of the way first. And once you kind of listen to everything, you'll kind of understand what I mean by how prices would probably most likely not go to zero. One other thing I want you guys to think about and realize while you're watching this video is that you'll come across a lot of people in these communities that will talk about how, oh, you don't understand. You know, this is the big brain play right here. People will think about Charizard or whatever card it is, MetaZoo, and they'll be nostalgic for these items. And 30 years from now, when they made a lot of money, they're going to want to pay a bazillion basil bucks for these things, right? But that's an assumption, and a lot of times you'll see in history that's a mistake. Because in markets like Beanie Babies, for example, right, people constantly try to drum up interest and talk about it because it was a speculative bubble, and, you know, they want to be able to sell these items again for the prices that they think it's worth, right? But you'll also realize that the people that constantly talk about it are also the people that are invested in these items, and they went in so deep that, you know, they're kind of have no choice, right? They have no choice but to try to sell these items, shill these items. And again, I always bring up the point that whenever you see attention brung to something, it's not organic, and it's just people advertising for it. You also have to remember too, when it comes to collectible card games, that literally the printer are going brrrr, and they're printing out like a bajillion of these, okay? And just because you feel like you bought out a market and you're holding on to a certain amount of it, you have to remember, everyone else right now is speculating on it. There's a bazillion people holding on to sealed cases, graded cards, and just because you only see one or two of them on the market for sale, you have to think about all the other people that are not posting and trying to hold these items thinking that it's going to go to the moon. Remember that. You're not alone, and that's very, very dangerous to think that you're the only person thinking this and holding on to this, and the prices are what they are, and they'll only go up. So what is a speculative bubble? First, we have to understand it using history and giving examples of what happened in the past in different industries, right? So first, in the really, really way back, we have the tulip bubble in like the 1600s. And then we had in the most recent 20, 30 years, which would be the real estate bubble and the housing bubble. And some would argue that there is a current housing bubble happening. And then we had the dot-com bubble in the 90s and 2000s, when all these dot-com websites were popping up and people were investing in literally every single one of them, despite not understanding how it works. And then that crashed, and you see like a lot of people invested in these companies that don't even exist anymore, with some survivors like, eBay, Amazon, and whatnot. And then we have the most famous one, which is the Beanie Babies bubble, where everyone was speculating on Beanie Babies if you were around at that time. And through all these examples, the main thing you have to remember is, despite how these things were speculative bubbles and they crashed, you have to realize that these prices do not zero out, but there is certain trends to it and patterns to it that you can learn from. And when we look at things like the housing bubble, you'll realize that bubbles when it comes to investments and bubbles when it comes to collections and collectibles could also be applied to your daily life and how you invest in your future as well when it comes to your finances. And when you look at speculative bubbles and bubbles in general, no matter what the industry is, whether it's finance or collectibles, you'll see and find something called the 5 stages of bubbles. The first stage of a bubble is displacement. And let's just go by the definition of what displacement is in the first place. And the dictionary definition of displacement is pretty much the moving of something from its place or position, right? So we're talking about movement in these markets, whether it's financial or in collectibles. And in this case, we're going to use Weiss Schwarz as an example. So when we analyze Weiss Schwarz, we think about what caused this market shift and what caused the sudden influx of so many investors and so much interest that suddenly came into the card game that drew up all these prices that are suddenly skyrocketing and peaking at, these record numbers. And this is one of those elephants in the room that I would have had to address eventually, especially since I'm talking about collectibles and card games. And I'll just say right off the bat that I have nothing against alpha investments. I don't hate him. I don't hate like these, the idea that evil investors and all this stuff, right? I think he's a great guy and he teaches a lot of really, really good things to people. But a lot of people misunderstand a lot of the videos that he makes, as well as a lot of the points that he makes. A lot of people watch snippets of his videos and calls everyone a Timmy when they don't realize they're a Timmy themselves, right? And what I mean by that is a lot of people are not financially established like Rudy is, and they treat themselves as financially established. And what do I mean by that? What I mean is that he does not invest in these collectibles and card games because it's his primary asset. He's already financially established, so if he were to lose any of his money in any of these collectibles, it will not financially ruin him. Whereas a lot of the people that probably watch the channel and they only watch snippets of it, they don't realize that when they're putting all their money into these assets, regardless of whether or fact that these sealed products will go up in value, it shouldn't be their primary investment. And I do like his videos because he also does come from a financial background as well, just like me, where he worked in finance and like Wall Street and all that stuff. And I just want to bring to the point that when people try to mirror how they invest with the same as how he invests, they don't realize that you're thinking about how you're investing with a millionaire's mentality when you're not a millionaire, and that could go wrong for you in all sorts of ways. So with that out of the way, so you pretty much get what Displacement is, right? It's because he has such a large following and he's talking about how he believes in it and how great of a card game is, whether it's MetaZoo, Flesh and Blood, or whatever it is, right? Of course, like there's things like, it's for entertainment value as well as he has a play in this as well too financially. But you have to realize that, okay, now we see what the catalyst is on what caused the displacement and what caused this sudden shift in the market where people didn't have a demand for all these sets like JoJo. All these cards were worth like $100, $200. You could say it's undervalued, whatever it is, right? But the fact is, once he started doing content on it and people were watching it and it was gaining traction, especially during the recent 2 years where collectibles have been in a boom, where everything is suddenly stonks, where whether you're buying Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, MetaZoo, whatever it is, right? So now we establish that this is what caused the displacement and what caused the sudden shift in the market. So the next stage of the bubble that you have to understand is pretty much the most exciting part of it, and it's the boom. So this is the stage when things start growing traction, right? So after Alpha Investment starts doing his videos and all these people during the past 2 years where people are sitting at home, they have money, they're looking to spend it, they're looking for what's the next biggest thing, whether it's Bitcoins, NFTs, crypto, whatever it is, right? So they're putting their money into things like MetaZoo and whatnot. In this case, they're putting money into Weiss Schwarz, and it's starting to gain traction, which is in all my other videos, you'll see like, oh, all these people suddenly moving into the market. You have people asking, what are the case rates? How many SPs can I pull from this? What's the best set to invest in? What's the holy grail? And you see all these people picking up all these items, sealed products, singles, whatever it is, right? And that's when the boom is starting to happen where, the prices might not have peaked just yet, but since all these new people have moved in and there's sudden interest in it, people are starting to bring up these prices over time. The third stage of a bubble, I feel, is the most dangerous one, and that's Euphoria. And what Euphoria is pretty much is when I talk about the topic of FOMO and the fear of missing out. This is the stage where everyone feels like all the prices can do is go up, 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 and up. And this is when something called the greater fool theory is applied, where everyone is willing to buy these items at whatever price it is set at, as long as they could pass it off to another greater fool. Meaning, remember when I talked about in one of my previous videos where a lot of these things are sort of like a pyramid scheme, like things like Herbalife and whatever it is, you'll keep profiting as long as you could pawn it off to someone else. And during these points of euphoria, everyone's fear of missing out is causing them to buy all these things because of this greater fool theory. So everyone is willing to buy all these prices regardless of whatever it is because they feel like, oh man, I need to snatch all these up, all these SPs up, all these rare cards up before someone else buys it because the price is only going to keep going up from this point on. Which you'll see in examples of, pretty much people are buying these cards, whether they're 1,000, 2,000, 3,000, 5,000, and they want to be like, I want to be the first one to grade these cards and get it into the market and sell it right away and then profit off of it, right? And everyone has that same mentality right now. And you think you're investing because you're following the advice of someone like Alpha Investments, who's just pretty much just buying up sealed products because he can afford to do so, whether or not these things go up or down. But a lot of these people that are buying into it right now don't realize that it's in a bubble where you're pretty much buying at these peak prices and you're assuming that the prices will only go up, right? So for some winners that are able to pawn it off to someone else, that's a greater fool. But then for the other people that bought into it, when you end up being at the bottom of this chain and you bought at these peak prices, you're in big trouble when you can't sell these items for the cost that you pretty much bought it at. And you're going to take deep losses or sometimes even like huge losses when it comes to some of these items that are like 10,000, 20,000, or thousands of dollars in general. And I'll give a real life example using the real estate and housing bubble crash during the recession. So people will know that I'm not pulling these, ideas and numbers out of my ass, right? So during the recession, pretty much people thought that the real estate market will only go up. You draw the parallels between this and any other market like collectibles and crypto and whatnot, right? And then a lot of people think that they're investing. Everyone thinks they're smart. Everyone thinks they're a know-it-all, right? But everyone's buying at these peak prices when these things were already speculated on at the low prices. So the smart people and the people that were able to afford it, like Alpha Investments, are able to buy these things at low prices. And then you have all these people come along thinking that, oh man, the prices can only go up, right? So now they think they're smart investors. They think they're like the wolves of Wall Street and like stonks to the moon, baby. So they're buying all these things at these peak prices, but they're buying these things with the assumption that these things will only continue to go up. But that's a fallacy because it's completely untrue. So in this example, if you replace the houses with a trading card or a collectible, you bought something for 314,000 at these peak prices, you could replace that with whatever, right? Charizard, Bunny Girl Mai, whatever it is, and then MetaZoo. And then the same item is going to drop in price to 207,000 if you were the person that bought at that peak price. Whoever bought it at a low price, let's say like $100,000 and sold it to you for $300,000, they're the one that profited off of it, right? But for you who bought at these peak prices because you thought you were a smart investor and you refused to listen to anyone else, then you lost $100,000. And this kind of ties back to how I say that there's a lot of misconception that people think that when I talk about bubbles, when I talk about how these stock prices don't make sense and how you get the rug pulled from under you, I don't mean that these items will literally bottom out and go to zero, right? Because realistically, it's kind of impossible, and you'll kind of understand why in the further steps that I'll explain. But just realize that you're taking huge risk, and a lot of times you'll take huge losses, especially if you cannot stomach it and you cannot financially afford it because you're not financially established. The next step you have to understand is the most important step, and I think that's one of the steps that we might be in right now when it comes to Weiss Schwarz, and it's profit taking. This is the most straightforward step and is very easy to understand. This is when people are selling all their things because everything is at its peak price right now. And you have to think about this logically. If these items were so rare and so valuable and the price can only go up, would everyone be in such a rush to be grading their cards, to be selling them right away, rather than keeping it for their own collections? So think about it, right? Before you buy these serial numbered cards, like 1 out of 10 Asunas or whatever it is, right? These like rare promo cards or Bunny Girl Mai's. If these items were so rare and the price was only gonna go up, would these people be releasing it into the market if they actually believe that these prices will only indefinitely go up? Think about that, and then you'll come to the answer yourself. And I'll mention this throughout every single step, and I have, right? if you're thinking about even investing and buying into these things, at this point, you're already buying at what peak prices are. And even if prices continue to go up, it just becomes riskier and riskier for you as someone to buy into these things when people already bought at these low prices. And everyone and their mother is speculating on these cards, and everyone and their mother is pretty much grading these cards. So when you connect all these things together, you'll realize how dangerous it is if you're not financially established and you're trying to play into these markets when you have no business in doing so. And everyone thinks that I think, people are evil or whatever it is. At the end of the day, everyone's just trying to make money. And can I really say that it's a scam? Not really. I guess they're just hustling, I guess, right? But I want to put this information out there again because I know a lot of people are living paycheck to paycheck. They're not financially established. They have no savings. And they think that these things will only go to the moon and that it's a smart investment and they're smart in investing in this because they see these like snippets of videos from like Alpha Investment, or they listen to all these people like, oh, these cards were only a couple $100. If you invest in, Fate Stay Night, it'll never get reprinted. Attack on Titans will never get reprinted, and things like that. It's all speculation, and it's very, very dangerous once again when you're speculating on something that's already heavily speculated and are at pretty much peak prices. And remember that for some people, $5,000, $6,000, $20,000 might be a drop in a bucket because they're making money, or you know what, they might even just be, swiping these on credit cards and doing it on a loan. But for the people that are more grounded, that are watching my videos, I want you to realize that you can't put yourself in the same position as someone like Alpha Investments and Rudy, right? You can't assume that he's buying all these sealed boxes, so you're going to buy all these sealed boxes. But if you're buying all these sealed boxes pretty much on a deferred plan, on a credit card, or if you're barely even making ends meet to begin with and you have no savings and you have no emergency money and you have no actual investments outside of these alternative investments like collectibles, like card games, you're in big trouble if these markets bottom out on you and you're pretty much gambling. And the final stage of bubbles is panic. And this is when you'll see the actual investors separated from the speculators. So the actual investors and the people that were flipping at this point have already profited from selling at these peak prices, right? So what happens when people panic and start realizing that, oh man, I might not be able to sell these items for what they are, which you'll start seeing in, pretty much in a Weiss market. Same as the Pokemon market, right? You had all these people that graded literally everything and now they couldn't afford it, right? So they're holding on to all these like junk slabs and graded modern cards, and they're like, oh, well, the only thing I could do is sell this at a discount, at a heavy loss, and all these sealed boxes I held on to that I bought on credit cards and loans, like, I can't hold on to them. They weren't going to the moon as I thought it was since they were thinking in such a short term. So what do? They sell everything at a discount. They sell everything at huge losses because they couldn't afford it to begin with. And the people that can afford it, or the people that were investing long term and actually want to invest in it at that point are like, you know what? Oh man, these people are now selling at these things at a heavy discount. And that's when people like Rudy and Alpha Investments and the people with financial means move in and once again move into these markets and go like, you know what? I'll pick up all of your things at a discount since you don't want them, and I'll even pay for shipping. And that is also what I mean by prices will not kind of bottom out completely, because when it reaches a certain amount, let's say if something was $10,000 and it drops to like 1,000, if someone has the money and they want to speculate on it, that's fine. They'll just pick it up as like, oh, whatever. It's at like a low price as opposed to whatever people are speculating on it right now. But if you're someone that's panicking and you were the one that bought these at $10,000, you bought a Roxy for $1,200, $2,000, you bought a Bunny Girl Mai for $5,000, $10,000, right? And if you don't have the financial means to take these losses, if people start not wanting these items, then you're going to sell it at a discount. And again, if you're not financially established and you had no money to begin with, and you're just betting on these cards and gambling pretty much, then you're going to lose a lot. And once again, I'll just kind of reiterate, after explaining all these concepts, I hope you come to realize that You could invest, but you have to be smart about it. The people that are buying at peak prices and buying into hype, buying into all these shill posts, buying into all these not for sale, not for trade posts saying that these are the rare items, and they're completely jacked up because of all these people shilling for it and telling you whatever's going to the moon. Realize when it comes to any of these Ponzi schemes, pyramid schemes, any kind of scam, crypto, altcoins, whatever it is, right? People get the rug pulled from under them because they were sold this idea that everything's going to the moon. And most of the time, anyone who tells you something is going to the moon is the same person that bought at these low prices, and they're shilling it to you to try to raise the price of these items to sell it into the market. Can I really say it's a scam? Not really. At the end of the day, the people that are buying into it, they're just buying into these advertisements, and they're the same people that are refusing to listen to actual messages out there like mine or whoever it is when I'm just trying to keep people grounded. So nobody has a crystal ball, right? When it comes to collectibles and card games and anything that's speculative like this, no one can predict whether or not these prices will go up. The only constant that you'll realize is that you do not ever want to be the person that buys at these peak prices. Someone that buys these things at the low prices prior to the boom and the hype, they're able to hold on to these things because it's not a big loss, right? Again, if you bought some of these cards, like the Albedo, for example, or the Bunny Girl Maya, or whatever it is, right? If you bought these cards for thousands of dollars and previously it was only a couple $100, that's already inflated by 10 times, 8 times, or however, 20 times, whatever the price is, right? So if you actually take stock and believe that any of these graded cards at a 10 or whatever it is multiplied by 20, 40 times, and you were the one that bought this, as opposed to the guy that bought these cards at $100, $200, or a couple $100, then you're pretty much taking the risk for someone else and you become the sucker. For the people shilling these cards and selling them, they take zero loss on it if it doesn't sell, right? Because whatever, it's a drop in the bucket. As opposed to if you were the one that bought these for thousands and thousands and $10, $20, $30,000, as opposed for you, if you can't afford it, you just lost $20, $30, $40,000.
Stop it. Get some help.
And all these things, after explaining all these 5 stages, I hope you realize this is exactly why I tell people that if you're not financially established and you cannot stomach or afford these losses, do not even think about investing in pretty much collectibles and card games. Because same as investing, most people cannot stomach these losses, especially if you don't have the financial means to do so. It's like that stupid meme of like diamond hands and paper hands, right? Most people have paper hands, and even if you have diamond hands, if you're buying at these peaks, you're pretty much being taken advantage of, and you're playing into a game that, other people are roping you into. If you think you're investing and you bought something at a low price and most of these prices peaked, you're probably better off selling these items and profiting from it and putting it into something else, right? But if you think you're investing and let's say you bought something for $50 and now it's risen to $800 and you're just continuously holding on to it and you can't stomach the losses later on and you're going to regret it, or if you need the money and you're not financially established, if you held on to these items even though it multiplied by price of 20, 40 times and you think you're a smart investor by not selling it, you're making a mistake. So on one end, if you don't sell it at these peak prices, you're making a mistake. But on the other hand, for the people that are buying at these prices, you are also making a mistake if you're purely just looking to invest in it, rather than if you were collecting it just for your pure enjoyment and you can afford it. Because if you're buying these items and you can't afford it and you're buying at these prices, what most likely is going to happen, same as in other markets like Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, or whatever it is, you're going to buy these items when you can't afford it, and you're going to end up releasing these items into the market at a complete loss or a huge loss because you didn't factor in that these things require a lot of time for you to hold on to, even sealed products. You don't factor in things like there's going to be fees. You don't going to factor in that there's going to be taxes. You don't factor in that there's going to take time for you to find someone to even buy it to begin with. You don't factor in that there's going to be a lot of things that could go wrong, like people scamming you saying that they didn't receive it. So if there's any advice that I could give people, whether it's for finance or when it comes to collectibles, the main point is do not buy at these peak prices, ever. all these stupid memes like Dogecoin to the moon, HODL and hold the line and all this bullshit. Do not listen to this. Realize that most of the time, by the time there's a lot of hype into something, you're already buying in when other people are also speculating on it. And if everyone's thinking the same thing, again, logically think about it. If everyone's going to get rich, does it logically make sense that literally everyone will get rich? If it was that easy, wouldn't everyone just be driving Lamborghinis and living in giant mansions? And we go back to thinking about how everyone that tells you to buy into these things are already invested in this. So if they're telling you to hold, what happens to the people that bought at cheap and then you as a sucker bought in and are jacking up the prices because you believe in the hype? Then they're going to sell everything once the prices peak out, and then you're going to be the sucker holding on to these things when the prices tank. And I'll go back to the idea of how we have to focus on the people that lose rather than only the giant stories of how people made a bazillion basil bucks, right? It's because a lot of these stories, when people lose financially, no one talks about them and no one shares them because it's shameful. But you need to think about these people because those people could be you if you're not smart about how you spend your money and how you choose what to invest in. But yeah, that's pretty much it when it comes to just identifying bubbles. And again, these concepts you could apply to any aspect of your life, including actual investments as well too. And the smarter you are about it, the more successful you'll be when it comes to your financial well-being. If you enjoyed the video, if you found it helpful, please share it with other people that you think would be able to help them, as well as just subscribe to the channel if you want to see more content like this, and like the video and let me know in the comments. I really appreciate it. And I hope for those people that do watch this and are investors, they learn something from it to understand that I'm not saying every investor is evil. My main point is that a lot of people that are thinking about investing in these games and a lot of people who are buying into these investments and getting roped into it don't realize that they're getting played for suckers and they're actually just benefiting people that could actually afford it, whereas most people are struggling and cannot afford these losses. And I just don't want to see that happen to people. But yeah, thank you again. Have a great day. And I hope you guys just take care of yourselves out there. And I'll see you next time.